Good morning. It's Sunday, September 13th, and there is so much to talk about. We're going to just focus on the election because now we're only a month and a half away, and really there is nothing more important than that at this point. So let's get going. Just on a personal level, as I've mentioned many, many times, I've been a Democrat all my life. I guess just like everything else, there are different kinds of Democrats, and I am a progressive Democrat, which in today's universe, more or less, it means that you're an FDR Democrat. You're a Democrat who believes in the New Deal and is not a quote unquote corporate Democrat or a moderate Democrat or one who is middle of the road. Progressive Democrats don't compromise. We're trying not to compromise the things that we believe are important. If FDR compromised, if Franklin Roosevelt compromised during the 1930s, we wouldn't have the world that was so successful for so long. There wouldn't be Social Security. Not one Republican voted for Social Security in the 1930s. Not one. So generations of Americans would have been in poverty as they were previous to Franklin Roosevelt if he had compromised. If he had compromised World War II, again, Republicans really didn't want to go into World War II until Pearl Harbor. They tried everything they could to stop Lend-Lease. They tried everything they could, which helped Great Britain and France and Russia and stay in the war and keep the war going until at least the United States did finally get in so that we can win the war and win the Western civilization and save Western civilization. In other words, FDR did not compromise and did not compromise all the things that made the United States successful from the 1930s basically until Ronald Reagan's presidency in 1980. It's basically a 50-year run, an incredibly successful run. He did everything he could to keep the banks under control so that they would not, again, take depositors' money and invest it in wild, crazy, risky things. That Glass-Steagall, the Republicans have destroyed. The Democrats helped destroy it with them. And many Democrats, not all. And that's where I'm going. There are a number of kinds of Democrats. And I am a traditional Franklin Roosevelt New Deal Democrat. Now, that means, in my mind, I'm a Democrat. I want fighting for Social Security, fighting for social services, fighting for people who are poor and middle class, and allowing social services to work, our money to work on a federal level or on a state level to help these people get through life, get through the world, and create programs that help citizens and immigrants and not make life harder but easier. That's what the government should be about. And In today's world, the way where we have come is that uh, the Republican Party, since Ronald Reagan and before, because they had lost so many elections, um, they decided that government is the enemy, which is kind of weird because they're in government. And so they really don't mean that government is the enemy. They mean the government run by Democrats is the enemy because, uh, again, during the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, it really looked like the Democrats would just basically conquer America and leave the Republicans behind. The Republicans had to figure out a way to stop the Democratic steamroller. And that was done in a number of ways. Of course, one was the murder of John F. Kennedy. If John F. Kennedy had survived, there's no telling when the next Republican would have been elected. Probably would have been a few decades after that. Anyway, so we've come to, between the 30s and the 60s and 70s, most Democrats were New Dealers. Most Democrats were very hardline, left of center, and did not take prisoners and did not uh, uh, negotiate the core issues that makes our society run. Since the late 70s and 1980, when Ronald Reagan won the election over Carter, since that election, the Democratic Party has diverged into progressive camp and into a corporate centrist rightist camp. And really, since the 1980s, it is my part of the party that has not been in power at all. Bill Clinton, the Clintons, we thought that he was progressive. He was not. Um, NAFTA was a horrible idea Russ Perot was correct. It was a horrible idea. A lot of jobs did leave the United States. And Obama, people still get upset when you say, Obama wasn't that good. But there's a Democratic base, especially those who are just blindly supportive of anything that the Democratic Party may do, or I should say, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, and the centrist 90% of elected Democrats are simply, they just are simply blinded. The rank and file are blinded by it and just don't get that there is a separation between them and the elected centrist corporate Democrat. So when I say on my Facebook pages that, I'm having a hard time voting for Biden and Harris, I think it was definitely for the second time, at least in a row, where the Democratic Party has basically did a successful coup during the primaries and took out Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, and Sanders was the front runner without beyond question, and replaced Bernie Sanders with basically You know, the safe candidate, the safe candidate who's got 35 years of a record that is as right wing as any Democrat during that period of time. So why would I support him? And that's what I ask people online. Why would I support a person running representing my party, but he's all the way to the right and was not the legitimate front runner, but was actually put in by a coup of the DNC. And then, as we find out, the DNC is full of corporate lobbyists. And primaries just were completely blown up, where in Nevada and New Hampshire and Iowa, all of a sudden adults didn't know how to count from 1 to 10. They couldn't count, and all of a sudden they couldn't get the numbers out, in a timely manner. Again, I've been very involved in the Democratic Party since almost the day I was born. I was elected to the convention, the Democratic convention, once in New Jersey, 4 times in Massachusetts. I've worked for, as I've mentioned many times, I've interned and worked for 2 congressmen. So I've been very involved, and I've been an elected official in a local town for over a dozen years, which is now a city. So I don't come to this ill-informed. I come to this not only very informed, but part of the party my entire life. The, that we elected Clinton to solve the problems that Bush and Reagan did. He did not do that. Okay. The Democratic Congress did not do that. Obama was elected to bring us back. He promised change, change, change. He did not do that. Immigration and immigrants got wiped by Obama. As it's well known now, the wars continued and multiplied under Obama. Under Obama, Khomeini or whatever his name was, can't even remember anymore, was murdered by the American, not Khomeini, the guy that was supposedly behind the World Trade Center, was murdered by the American military on some secret operation. That's against American law. And which under Obama, so that we become the terrorists. We become the people that go into people's countries, take a military leader or some guy from that wasn't put in front of a judge and a jury yet, and we just kill him, murder him, and dump him in the ocean, supposedly. Who the hell knows where he is? I don't know if he was really killed or not, to tell you the truth. His body was never found because Obama said that it was dumped in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Well, how do I know whether that's true or not? Maybe there was an agreement made by the Saudis, because he's Saudi Arabian, between the Saudis and the American government. Here, stay in your cave for the rest of your life, and we'll leave you alone. So I have no clue. And why would I think that? Because under Bush Jr., when 9/11 happened, which the anniversary was just a couple of days ago, and which is another whole story. when all the planes in the entire world uh, were being landed, were being forced to land and grounded, all of a sudden, two planefuls of Saudi Arabians go home and was allowed to go home because George Bush allowed them to go home. So our government, I mean, you got to be kidding. So, so again, taking us to now. So yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not. I'm not blinded by how my party has over the years uh, morphed into a corporate lobbyist uh, Disneyland, and Biden has just come out recently and said that he's actually going to increase military spending. Well, I'm for cutting military spending by 50 to 75%. And we would still be number one. Even if we cut by 50%, we would still be number one in the world in military spending. So it sounds horrible, cutting it 50%. 50% is $400 billion. There's still 400 billion more that we're spending it on, and that would still make us number one in the world. We have hundreds and hundreds of bases around the world. We shouldn't have more than 20. 20 bases is plenty. We have 800, something like that. We are a military industrial complex that spends a third of all of our tax money on a military that is absolutely out of control and has been since World War II, post World War II. And so in the year 2020, the Democratic presidential candidate goes, we're going to increase military spending. Now, how absolutely insane is that when that money is needed in so many other places, especially now with millions of people unemployed, millions of people about to lose their homes, and about to lose everything else, healthcare, jobs, everything. Because Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and to some extent the Democratic Party, is unwilling or unable to negotiate a deal. And like I've mentioned in the last number of tapes, a number of shows, or whatever you want to call what I'm doing, that the Congress was on vacation for a number of weeks while Americans are dying still every day. 1,000 people every day are dying. We're now over 200,000 dead, more than 3 times the amount of guys who came back in body bags. 4 times, I'm sorry, almost 4 times as many people who came back in body bags from the Vietnam War in just 5 years. I'm sorry, in 10 years. And in just 5 or 6 months, we have 200,000 dead and from this virus, which there is still no national policy, and there isn't going to be one. So who am I going to vote for? Well, it's really not a question, because in many other tapes that I've dealt with already, We have an electoral college which disenfranchises more than half the people, just about half, or at least half of the people in this country. Actually, it disenfranchises almost everybody except for the winning group of people in each state. So in California, I'm just throwing out a number, but California, if you have 8 million Democrats voting and 5 million Republicans, the 5 million Republicans don't count because the electoral college goes only to the winner. So those votes are taken and it's ripped up. On the other hand, in South Carolina is going to go red. There's only 7 electoral votes there, 7 or 8. I think it's 7. So if 100,000 Republicans come out and vote, they win because there's only going to be about 60,000 Democrats. But those 60,000 people who voted don't count. They don't get any electoral votes. You see what I'm saying? Only the winner in each state, those people, if you're with the winner, your vote counts. The rest do not. So in the state where I'm sitting right now, in this room, Democrats are going to win no matter what. They'll win over probably 1 to 2 million by 1 or 2 million votes. So it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. All right. Now, I have never not voted in my life. I've voted every time from the age from 1972 until now. I voted in the primary. I wasn't going to, but I decided to. I will probably vote in about a month and a half. I was probably going to vote for the very first time a third party. I'm not going to do that now because the third parties are also completely compromised and they're useless. They're completely useless because they've been compromised. They've been infiltrated and compromised. So they're not really third parties. They're nothing. So if I go out and vote, I will most likely vote Democratic, which is kind of, kind of makes no sense. But because the key thing is to definitely get rid of the person we have in the White House now. That is agreed. I agree that is something that must be done for this country to at least move from its total insanity on every issue, whether it's foreign policy or domestic, every issue. Every policy that this administration has is insanity. It's lunatic. And again, I will say that my background, my educational background is international law. It's the law of the sea. And the relevance of that is trade, international trade. So the trillions and trillions of dollars that goes on between all the major ports and minor ports of the world, that's what I studied. And what is going on now in the United States is insane. It's insane. Now, it's for so many reasons. And one reason, a couple of reasons, probably the most important ones to the people of this country and the people of this planet is the environment and the climate change, which are hand in hand. And pollution. It's all hand in hand, all the same thing. And with that also is oil and fracking. And with this administration now, fracking, this administration is trying to create offshore oil drilling in Alaska and all over Alaska and all over the West Coast and all over the East Coast, except for Florida, where there is 29 electoral votes. How ironic is that? And um, meanwhile, this administration is also trying to destroy and is very close to destroying the Environmental Protection Agency. It is in the Republican Party's interest, because they're human beings, because their families are human beings. It is in everybody's interest, it's in humanity's interest to clean this planet. It has nothing to do with party. So even though the Democratic Party's recent track record is not as good as it used to be, it's still a step or two better than the Republican Party and this present administration. So on the environment and the EPA, climate change, on those issues alone, it's important to change from Republican to Democrat as a first step towards real reform. But we can only do one thing at a time, it seems, in this country now. We're not able to do the big things that we used to do, it seems, from the 30s to the 60s and 70s. So we have to turn the ship around. That's the first job. To get to a new destination, that's a whole nother thing. But in November, in just a month and a half, I agree. We have to vote the present administration out, not only out of the presidency, but out of um, the Senate. That is a must. That is just as important as the presidency. If the Republicans keep control of the Senate, they will be able to stop just about everything that is possibly good and decent. Um, and we cannot afford it at this point. Not in time or in money or in any other way. The issues and the problems are just too big. We have to end these wars. We have to pull back militarily and in a lot of other different ways. We have to break up large corporations. We have to break up large banks. We have to put people back to work. We have to have that Green New Deal, which includes the elimination of fossil fuel vehicles within only a few years. At most. That's what must happen. There must be a brand new infrastructure in every way. Brand new public education infrastructure, trade infrastructure, new railroad infrastructure, uh, high speed for both freight and passenger from coast to coast and in regional markets. The amount of people that would be put back to work, there would be so many more new jobs created that we would need to have robust immigration and talk about reform, there needs to be a complete, brand new, comprehensive immigration solution that when people knock on the door of the American border, it should be no more than 30 days before they become American citizens. American citizens within 30 days, period. And the only thing that could stop that is if they have medical issues of certain types. That is similar to what was going on during the 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s, where millions of people came to New York, came to Ellis Island. They were on Ellis Island for a couple of days, getting their hands stamped, and then they went off to New York City, to Lower East Side, or to Newark, New Jersey, or to Long Island, or other parts of the greater New York area, and they became American citizens. They were Italian, they were Jewish, Eastern European, Polish, Russian, from all over Europe, all over the world. And that's how it worked. And we're talking about 30 million people over a 30-year period of time. It did nothing but help America grow into a superpower, bringing in all those people, all the poor people, all the people who, like people I was related to, my ancestors, recent ancestors, came over from Middle and Eastern Europe, maybe few of them illegally, because they didn't all come over legally. They were hidden in the cargo holds of ships, and they just came to America and became citizens. America was never hurt by any of them. That's what should be happening now. And for too long, for too many decades now, immigration has turned into uh, a fascist, genocidal insanity in the United States, where people have been held for years. The first book I read on this issue, it was in the early 1990s, 1980s, early 1990s. I read a couple of books. And where did I pick these books up from, by the way? At an airport, at Newark Airport. And I started reading about immigration and how people were being held in the prisons of New Jersey for years. That's got to stop. That entire infrastructure has to end. And one of the things that needs to happen, I have found out recently, I don't, most Americans, I'm sure, not aware of it. Somebody who's informed as much as I am, I wasn't even aware of it until recently, very recently, that the immigration judges are not part of the judicial part of our government, branch of our government. They're part of the executive branch part of our government. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. That's why it doesn't work, because there's no direct congressional oversight. Their boss is the executive branch, is the president. And so when you have a president who's a lunatic or a xenophobe, this is what happens, where you separate people and you put them in detention camps and all the rest. And by the way, that's still going on. They have this Nazi-like separation of people, which is going on, and other kind of inhumane laws that are illegal, both from our own Constitution and from the UN Charter that we are signers of, those are all things that need to be changed. So I agree that the President mission is the worst possible enemy of our Constitution that I can see at this moment. So that's what needs to change. And that's where I'm at right now. I do see at this moment, on September 13th, I still do see a Democratic victory. I do see the Democrats winning the Senate by at least a 52-48 advantage. And I think Biden and Harris at this point will win approximately 416 electoral votes, which means Trump will. But that's what I can see at this point. There's a very good chance of it. We will see. That's it for today. Thanks a lot.